Creativity is the act of opening reality, whilst mastery is the act of closing reality into repeatable forms. In culture, we need both the explorer and the maintainer. In today's video, we're going to be exploring if there's any objective truth about creativity, what it actually means. And if you're wondering who I am to be asking that question, well, I'm a creative professional with over a decade's worth of experience working with brands and agencies big and small. I've worn many hats in my time: writer, director, producer, strategist, camera operator, sound designer, editor, motion designer, animator, and technician. Outside of the professional sphere, my music's been listened to over 500,000 times. I'm a self-published author, I've built an app, and I run this YouTube channel as well. All that together puts me in the top 0.48% of the global population in Harvard's Creative Achievement Questionnaire. And the reason I'm sharing that isn't to pat myself on the back, it's simply to validate the fact that I'm someone who has thought about these questions very deeply for a long time. And with that, welcome to Field Notes. It's my understanding that creativity has everything to do with novelty, exploring reality and interacting with it in new ways. Now, there are people who would suggest that if you're being truly creative, you need to be pushing the boundaries of what's culturally possible. They'd say that you have to be a better artist and inventor than Da Vinci. You would have to be a better filmmaker than Steven Spielberg. You would have to be a better musician than Mozart. And although I think it's aspirational to want to be one of the greats and have some real genuine impact on society and the culture as a whole, I worry that that definition stops people from getting on the journey of creativity in the first place. In my last video, we spoke about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that when people get to the top of the pyramid, when they reach self-actualization, that many of them come undone, often worrying that they won't be able to reach the same heights as the greats who came before them. And I think they do themselves a personal disservice with this, because when you worry about the achievements of others, it can often stop you from going on your own personal journey into these mediums. I don't think on a personal level that's really useful for everyday normal people. So I'm not much of a fan of that definition. The definition that I think is more appropriate and useful for creativity is a personal exploration of something new. So in order to help you understand my concept of personal creativity, I'm going to teach you now, through a thought experiment, how to see reality in a different way to the way that you usually do. I'm assuming that you won't have done this before, but hopefully this is a novel concept for you. So first of all, I want you to understand that every shape that we see is made up of either a straight line, a C curve, an S curve, or a combination of these things. Now, if you look around your room and start applying that logic, and you take a snapshot in your mind and turn it into a flat 2D image, you're going to have to use your imagination to convert 3D space into a 2D image. What you'll begin to understand is that reality, your entire reality, is a derivative of these three lines. And it's the reason why I've chosen the circle for the banner image. It's just two C curves put together, and it's really to illustrate to you that creativity doesn't have to be complicated. It can be something quite simple. And if you're doing something for the first time, if you're interacting with reality in a way that you haven't before, then that can be a creative act. It seems to me that a lot of creatives reach the same conclusions around creativity, that it's a remixing of reality. I believe it was Chris Doan from the YouTube channel The Future. That's where I first heard it. But he was very transparent in the way that he communicated it. He said that he got the idea from Austin Kleon, who wrote Steal Like an Artist. And one of the most prominent aspects of this book by Austin Kleon is that there is a idea and inspirational family tree, that everyone that you're influenced by, everyone that inspires you, they have their own inspirations and their own sets of influential people, chaining back all the way to the start of written history Everything is derivative. We're all standing on the shoulders of those that came before us. And I was inspired by Austin Kleon's Steal Like an Artist so much that I called my book Rob Like a Robot, which, other than therapy for me, was an exploration of what it means to be a creative in an industry that is quickly evolving and where access is becoming more readily available to ordinary people. I think I took a rather optimistic approach about the technology in this book, but I also went into my own struggles, my worries, my fears, my experience working in the creative industry for over a decade, and ultimately my coming to terms with the fact that my psychology might be a little bit different than your average person. But you know what? That's okay. Mastery is creativity once it's cooled. And what I mean by that is in the pursuit of something novel, the first time that you do something, you're being very creative. And as you continue to do that thing, as you continue to draw these circles, it becomes closer to perfection every time. What you're doing is taking the thing that was once new and creative, and you're making it rigid, building it into a process, a structure which is repeatable. And in a sense, you are taking something that is new and you are turning that into tradition. And that forces another question, which is ultimately if the art of mastery, the pulling of something new into tradition, can be done through a machine, through automation, then where does the value lie in creativity? Because a mastered act can still be beautiful, but the mystery component of it, the pursuit of something new, is lost. And I think that puts more value into the exploration. That's not to say that there isn't value in the harmonizing and the narrowing of the creative act into something more conservative and repeatable, something more easy to understand, more than to ask the question if the soul and the heart of the work is in the exploration of the novel idea rather than the laborious mechanical process of refining that creative act. A perfect system can become a prison in the sense that if you start to close your mind and you focus on one proven method, then you ignore the potential of other possibilities around you. And it's often because mastery, conservatism, tradition rewards repeated safe processes. Opening your mind up again can become a little bit too risky. If you've already got a method that is tried and tested, it would almost be a waste of resources if you're already succeeding doing what you're doing. But there is an issue with that in the sense that the world has never stood still. The culture, it shifts and it changes, and technology advances at breakneck speeds. And that's when creativity comes back into play again, because if you can avoid being too rigid in your mastery and holding on to the old processes, and you can open your mind up again, you can afford yourself the ability to waste time, explore new ideas, new mediums, new territory. And as the world is turbulent and the ground can collapse beneath you, if you imagine yourself as the branches of a lightning strike, if you spread your net fairly wide, you'll have a better chance of landing and finding a new path. Now, from the conversation so far, you might be getting a sense that creativity and mastery are butting heads against each other, and I can understand why you would think that, but I want to introduce you to a concept of Hermetic philosophy called the principle of polarity. Now, polarity is to do with the duality of two extreme opposites. So think good, evil, happy, sad. You more or less have the concepts ready. And what I'm suggesting is that both mastery and creativity are on the same spectrum and that they influence each other. If you look at the banner image on the side, if you think about the concept of drawing circles before, it's when you take that knowledge and you start to apply it in a different way than you did previously. So in this example, It's circles over circles, many circles together. Some of them are shaded in, some of them aren't. And if we think about it in more practical terms with the concepts that we've learned from earlier, that sense of remixing these mastered ideas into new mediums, then very quickly you can take principles from one medium, let's say, for example, writing, where you learn about pacing and energy, and you can apply that to music production. You can apply that to a video edit. And the point of this really isn't to say that either side of this spectrum is better than the other. It's just that there's a definite strategy in moving between the two. If you become too rigid in the sense of closed-mindedness, then if the world shifts, you're more likely to injure yourself when you fall. Likewise, though, if you're too open-minded and you have your head in the clouds, you might walk off a cliff. Some minds are built to leave the path, and in the case of many successful creatives, they tend to be divergent thinkers. They're problem solvers who are so concerned with the future that they'll walk out towards it to try and get an understanding before everyone else. They'll head towards the unresolved. They want spontaneity, creativity. If you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's all about pushing the boundaries of reality and seeing where you fit in. It's easy to come across as naive, foolish, or even potentially reckless, as no one really understands the value that you're trying to go after yet. And it's certainly been the case for me. I remember when I was getting into digital music production and there was a sense of using technology for music, is that not a bit gross? And then I picked up a Blackmagic cinema camera and there was a sense of, why don't you get a Sony camera? Blackmagic Design, they're a new brand, that is a bit gross. And then again, opening Comfy UI for the first time and trying to understand generative models and how they work, and if they have a component that can be utilized for filmmaking and graphic design and animation. A lot of people looked at that and thought, it seems a bit weird that we don't know how to approach it. But it's that sense, if no one's willing to do the exploration, then you're not going to find any useful components of these tools. It's the people on the fringes that push us forward. And even if they fail, they reveal new territory. We get expanded workflows, new software, and ultimately more options than we had before. Just to expand on this concept a little bit further, we can talk about the psychology of groupthink versus individuality. And here you can see I have a picture of a bunch of zebra with one who is outside of the herd, who's about to be pounced on. Now, one hypothesis as to why zebra have evolved to have this pattern is if you're trying to hunt them and they're together, it becomes quite difficult to distinguish who is who. And I think this is a very useful visual metaphor for not wanting to stand out. And you can think about it in any office environment that you've ever been in. If you are part of the clique within an office, you might have the same haircut as everyone else. You might wear the same clothes. You might do the same makeup. You might listen to the same music. There is a sort of security in being invisible. If you think of nationalism and what that's become across the West recently, it's all about surface level things. People are so scared and anxious that their panic leads them to want to literally blend in with other people who are the same skin color, which is just a bit strange and unfortunate, really. So there is a psychological argument to say that bigoted and racist people are very scared individuals. And it makes me wonder, if they existed in a world where they felt safe, would everyone just get along? So maybe you can blame the news media. Maybe we can blame algorithms for pushing negativity. But maybe there's a solution in making everyone feel good and nice.
Don't be a scared, bigoted, racist person. Just be happy instead. Look at this cat with a birthday cake. Isn't this Japanese garden pretty? Look at this retiree who just got their pension and is alive for it. Life can be okay. sometimes. Ignore the wars, ignore the oil prices, ignore the potential famine.
So that was an example of when a creative needs to be reined in by the group. See, left to my own devices there, that could have gone on for just a bit too long. It's a good thing that I'm very conscientious and realized the error of my ways sooner rather than later. But just to loop us back to relevance and make this bit seem deliberate, because it is, I want to draw your attention to the fact that both sides, the traditional and the exploring side, the conservative and the progressive side, are in balance and require each other. You see, the creative person, they're supposed to go off, tread the path others won't walk, and sometimes they fail, other times they succeed. But when they do succeed, when they do have an idea that is beneficial to the wider community, the maintainers, those conservatively minded people, they need to come forward in order to build a path so the rest of society can catch up. And ultimately, that's how you turn novelty and creativity into tradition. It's a process where you explore reality, you throw yourself into the world, and you see what sticks. And when you find something that sticks, you work hard to master that and bring it back for the rest of the community. This pattern happens again and again throughout history. A divergent thinker, someone who's creative, an inventor, an explorer, an artist, they travel down a path that was forbidden. They're denounced, ostracized, bullied, mocked, attacked, called impure. That is until the innovation is actually seen to have value for wider society. And it's up to us as a collective to decide if the new path has any value, or if it doesn't, if we need to travel down another. But I worry sometimes that there is a sense that we should stay still. I see many creative people at the moment who seem to get stuck at the wrong end of this spectrum. They become afraid to explore new territory. They become fixated on one process or a medium. And because they're not doing an exploration, they lose their sense of creativity. And then I see a lot of people who are supposed to exist on the fringes. They're supposed to be pushing boundaries. They're supposed to be progressively minded, excited adventurers, explorers, just staying put because of, in some instances, fear, but in other instances, because the herd, the group, they're saying, don't move forward, stay still. And this is the first time I feel like I'm seeing a majority of creatives who are just too worried to do what they're psychologically supposed to do, which is to be on the fringe, which is to try new ideas, which is to test things, which is to have courage in the face of animosity. Because in a world where we can't be creative, where we can't be spontaneous, where we can't explore new territory, it becomes impossible for people to self-actualize. That little triangle at the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it requires this. It requires the testing of yourself against reality. And if you don't want to partake in reality anymore because it seems scary or different, then we've failed as a community. So what is the truth of creativity? It's your first step into a personal, undiscovered territory where intention meets reality in hope of finding novelty. Mastery and creativity exist on the same plane, but it helps to think about it as a circle because it's part of the same cycle. You start with curiosity, you walk the path, and if you're lucky enough to find a valuable idea, you refine it, you organize it, you turn it into structure, you master it, and you make it tradition, but you'd be wrong in thinking that you stay still at that point. The point of creativity is to take part in the cycle again and again, to go out, continue to explore reality, continue to find novelty, and not just to discover meaning and purpose for yourself. If you're lucky, you'll be able to help other people on their journey too. Okay, that's going to be it from me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.